Hi, I'm Rand Westland with the next installment in our series, The Quest for Normalcy, the continuing saga of an economy seeking normalcy. Previous webcasts in this series have addressed various facets of this quest. The recent recession forced overextended companies and consumers to address unsustainable balance sheets and spending. Long-term economic conditions, accelerated by the use of debt and leverage, brought us to a point where additional borrowing was unsupportable. The panic of 2008 forced everyone to answer this question. If I had to live on the cash I have in my pocket, how long would I survive? The dilemma of the push-me-pull-you forced the financial system to answer these questions. Do we know the risks we are taking? Are we prepared to deal with those risks? Consequently, the ongoing efforts to address these issues, coincident with the end of several long-term trends, created the land of pause. Happily, these same consumer and corporate groups have made great strides in correcting some of the previous imbalances. The former heady days of debt-fueled growth have yielded to these hazy days of income-fueled growth, slower and much less likely to go careening off the track, but uncomfortable too. The recession may have officially ended in June 2009, but even the official declaration revealed a committee that is less than enthusiastic about what has transpired since. The combination of slow growth and widespread uncertainty has resurrected a thought-to-be-extinct element of our economic life, what I call the cash of cash. First, according to the Federal Reserve, non-financial corporate cash stands at $1.8 trillion, or about 11% of mid-year assets, the most since the 1950s. Why have corporations raised their cash holdings? For several reasons: uncertainty, repairing of excesses, and squirreling away just-in-case monies. Since these corporate initiatives coincide with rapidly recovering revenues and earnings, cash accumulates at a fairly rapid clip. Just a few short years ago, corporations feared too much cash, as it invited the potential for takeovers by someone who wanted that cash. Further, even as some companies are paying back debt, others are issuing new bonds to take advantage of currently extraordinarily low rates, which makes long-run sense, but adds to the cash pile. Additionally, growing cash in overseas subsidiaries, which incurs extra tax if pulled back home to invest, also contributes to the cash. Granted, some corporate gain has come at domestic consumers' expense as job growth remains anemic. Nonetheless, these consumers also show steady improvement in their financial conditions. Past splurges still haunt. Although hard to fathom, according to the Federal Reserve, in the 15 years following the 1990-91 recession, consumer debt use increased significantly, rising from about $200 billion on an annualized basis in the second quarter of '91 to a peak of about $1.4 trillion in the second quarter of '06. Clearly, this exponential rate of growth could not continue. Now, both debt service payments and household debt outstanding are in decline. The debt service ratio stands at about 12% of personal disposable income, roughly the average level of the last 30 years. Further, the financial obligations ratio, which picks up leases, rent, insurance, and property taxes, has fallen to about 17%, its lowest level since 1998. The upshot of these trends, given a muted but positive growth in overall income, is the rebuilding of savings. Various Federal Reserve studies indicate that consumers increase their saving for the same reasons as do companies: uncertainty, repairing excesses, squirreling away just-in-case monies. Interestingly, savings also appear to climb even if income grows when there is a reduced availability of credit. Whether wealthy or non-wealthy, this indication means that people choose to save when conditions suggest that they may need that money and outside sources are limited. Remember our first question? What if I had to live on the cash in my pocket? Thus, this consumer cash accumulation does seem to be a perfectly rational response to uncertainty. Another consideration remains for the accumulation of cash in the cash: Federal Reserve activity. Since the panic struck, government authorities worldwide have supported the financial system with billions of dollars, directly and indirectly. The famed quantitative easing of the Federal Reserve has placed monies in the market in exchange for securities, effectively adding $1.4 trillion of cash that has no present place to go. Amid charges that banks are hoarding cash, examiner requirements have raised the amount of capital that must be held, effectively reducing the monies available for loans and maintaining or increasing cash on the balance sheets. While financial companies would welcome the chance to loan out the money they have received, very weak loan demand also works to keep the monies as cash in the cash. After all, it's hard to increase borrowing when the goal is to reduce borrowing. So, what is happening with all this cash in the cash? In the corporate world, acquisition activity has picked up. Dividends are rising. Capital spending is growing rapidly. This moves cash to others who also have a propensity to save some of it. As consumers and corporations add to deposit accounts and pay down credit cards and credit lines, financial companies' investment portfolios continue to grow. Consequently, the sum of the parts shifts that cash from subcash to subcash, and all seek safety, and the cash slowly continues to build. Of late, money flows into bond funds has fueled a hot debate over whether the bond market is in a bubble. Comparison to tech bubble investing certainly raise eyebrows. Regardless of one's viewpoint, monies are migrating from money market funds to bond funds, particularly short-term funds. Since the Federal Reserve has pushed the Fed funds rate down near zero, money market funds offer virtually no yield. This shift indicates some rational decision-making on the part of investors as a reasonable response to ugly money market yields. Meaning, even though the inflows into bond funds have reached epic proportions, these monies really remain a part of the cash of cash. Certainly, the owners would rather do something more productive with them, but caution prevails, and bond funds appear more productive than money market funds. Which brings us to our last point. The accumulation of cash, the extraordinarily low level of interest rates, and the expectation for it continues to remain dire indefinitely reflects a public peppered with troubled assessments and furrowed brows. In and of itself, overextension cannot be fixed by low rates, only via changes in habits. Some changes have occurred, some may just be ephemeral. Whether the decline in debt levels is a result of writing off the low end of borrowers or a broad-based repaying of debt, 2 years of declining aggregate debt levels and income ratios mean less of each new dollar is pre-spent, laying the groundwork to turn current conditions toward better economic growth. For those concerned about the overuse of debt, when conditions encourage the misuse of resources, people will misuse resources. But when the creditor comes to call, the party ends, and the marshaling of resources, i.e. savings, begins again in earnest. At present, growing levels of uncommitted cash flows remain captive to the low confidence levels. The need to become more self-sufficient and to be more careful remains the tune of the day. Nevertheless, increasing consumer and corporate flexibility suggests stronger activity in the days ahead. As comfort in financial positions grows, we will put the cash of cash to work. Thanks for listening in, and have a great day.